What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege to have. Uh, he is a writer, director with a premiere movie on Amazon. This they dropped this weekend. It descended, and a fellow graduate of Inglewood High, circa 2003. The my former tag team champion of the world, at least we thought at 17. That man is Avan Hardwell.
Yes, sir.
Avan,
What?
dude, long way. It's
Hey, man, it has. We have come a long way for sure. 17 years to now, man. Time has truly, it's been a journey.
the years have been a lot kinder to you than they have me. You look absolutely the same. I might have gained a pound or 300. But regardless of that, I mean, what obviously I had kind of seen your iterations and your transformation from that, kind we weren't infants at all, but that time period was so innocent and so, I mean, infantile compared to the journeys that we've traveled, and people
Right.
do travel, along this path, and the path of substance, the path of knowledge, acquiring knowledge, and I mean,
Mhm.
the path of really figuring out what it is that your purpose is essentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you have always been somebody that has been, to me, a true visionary in every sense of the word.
Mm,
But I mean, now it's kind of crazy because we can see your vision. It literally manifests itself in the night they came.
right. Man, listen, the night they came is a culmination of a great many experiences over, I would actually say it's about 17 years in the making, to be quite honest with you, man. I mean, as you said in your wonderful intro, we as teenagers, you have dreams of doing things that hopefully, bring joy and love and laughter into the life of people. And when we were in high school, for us, the WWF, I think it was at the time, it brought us a lot of joy and entertainment, and we were able to sort of escape in ways that we weren't able to do in the cities that we grew up in, navigating the things that we had to navigate in Inglewood. You know what I'm saying? At that time, and so it really was, growing up, it really was. Uh, I can remember, seeing films like The Goonies, uh, E.T., Close Encounters. These are all films that I loved growing up, but we weren't necessarily represented in those films. You know what I mean? The way I think that we would have liked to be, because we wanted to explore and do all these different things. And so, as I just grew older, and once I figured out that my path in entertainment, right, yours, I see the belts behind you, man. You know what I mean? You're still doing what you do, interviewing great people that brought us the joy that we experienced as kids. And so you're in that arena doing your thing. And so I'm in a different arm of the arena, from a narrative space, bringing stories that hopefully bring the same joy, love, and laughter, and at the same time, duality. You know what I mean? That displays our experiences in a truly profound way. So yeah, man, it's visionary. I appreciate that. It's really, for me, it's about just bringing our experiences to the screen, displaying them with an honesty that we haven't seen, growing up. We didn't see.
No, absolutely. And it's kind of crazy because, I mean, knowing that you had a very introspective way of looking at the world, even then, right?
Hmm.
I mean, and it's not just high school. I mean, we knew each other in junior high as well. And,
Absolutely.
you've always, like I said, you've always kind of had the foresight to kind of see, almost, the cliche is 10 steps ahead. You were kind of
Mm.
like 25, in terms of the rest of everyone else.
Yeah.
So at what point did you know? I mean, obviously, you mentioned the Goonies, you mentioned, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
E.T.,
Mm-hmm.
and those kind of seminal kind of earmarks in your memory, and what kind of shaped you as a young man. But at
Mhm.
what point did you go like, hey, maybe I can do that, or maybe I'm going to start writing stuff and writing treatments and what have you. At what point of the process did that come?
Well, I mean, I think like in life, um, you know, in the life of a movie, you have many different edits, right? And you have many different pieces and parts that make up a movie. Sometimes something that you thought started in the beginning, that you think belongs in the beginning, actually goes at the end, and something that you think goes at the end might actually be in the middle. And so you have all these different fragments of a story that are pieced together to make a cohesive, hopefully fulfilling narrative. And for me, I would say that it was a myriad of things and a myriad of times. I don't know if we have time to go into all of it. I don't want to be long winded. You know,
Absolutely, come on, bring
yeah.
it.
But I would say, my dad. I can remember waking up in the middle of the night when I was about 5 or 6, before my parents got divorced. And I woke up in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep. And my father was a screenwriter for a long time, or at least he aspired to be a screenwriter. And I remember walking into the living room, and he was at the kinship kitchen, and he had these legal pads, that were all over the place, scribbled with dialogue and action lines. Obviously, I didn't know they were action lines at the time, but it scribbled all these different things, and he had about 6 or 7 mechanical pencils lined up right next to it in case one broke. He'd go right to the next one. And I remember coming in, and he was writing a script about Marvin Gaye, and he was adapting a book called "Make Me Wanna Holler." And I remember sitting down. I turned on the television, and he stopped, and he was like, "Oh, no, 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 turn that off. You're not going to get me in trouble with your mother." So he made me turn off the TV, and he said, "Come over here." And so I went to the table where he sat, and he pulled a yellow. He pulled one of the sheets from the yellow pad, and he gave me one of the mechanical pencils, and he told me to go over there and sit down and write a story. And so I went, I sat, and I don't know why, but the first story I can ever remember writing starred Angela Bassett and Denzel Washington as runaway slaves. I don't know. I don't know why that was the first story I wrote, but it was. I remember it was 1 page long, and I remember giving it to him. And when I finished, I handed it to him. He told me to go back to bed. When I woke up the next morning, it was on the table and had all these red marks on it, and he had edited it in like a paper. Um, and so that was my first experience writing a story. And even then, I didn't know that I wanted to be a storyteller. I was just trying to be like my dad. You know what I mean? He was a writer. It only made sense to write something down 5 feet away from him while he was, burning the midnight oil on a story about one of my favorite, if not my favorite, artist of all time, which is Marvin Gaye. Um, Fast forward, as we matriculated junior high and together, and ultimately high school. I don't know if you remember, there were 2 English teachers from Inglewood in particular that had a very profound effect on me from a literary perspective, and that was Mr. Hafley and Miss Farrell. And Miss Farrell, in her English class, she required us to do free writing for like the first 10 minutes of the class. Didn't matter what it was, but to write something down. And I remember, at the end of the semester, and her giving the grades back, you turn in your notebook, and I remember her writing something to the effect of, "You have a profound use of words. I only hope that you dedicate more time to how you use them, in the way that you use them when you speak out of turn in my class." Because I guess back then I used to finish work pretty quickly, and then I could, I'd be talking quite a bit. But that message stuck with me. And then Mr. Hafley had a profound effect with a quote that he had that excuses only satisfy the person giving them. In the first murder mystery I ever wrote, I wrote in his class. And even then, I didn't know I wanted to be a writer. It wasn't until I saw the film Crash. It was by pure happenstance. I was on a date, and the person I was on a date with made us late for the film that we were going to see. And I was like, we ain't going home, and I'm not going into this movie late because I hate if I miss 1 second of it, then I feel like I don't know what the story's about. So the only thing that was coming up was Crash. And as we sat there, I just remember thinking to myself, I know all of these characters in some way, shape, or form. I've heard people speak like this, and I can't believe somebody actually let this person put this up on a movie screen. It was the most honest, raw, and unabashed thing I'd ever seen. And when that film was over, I remember sitting in that theater, the lights came up, people are leaving. And I remember sitting in that theater, and I probably sat there for about 10, 15 minutes. The crew was cleaning up. I hadn't moved. And my girlfriend at the time, she was like, can we go? And I was just like, I was mesmerized. And on the way home to that my apartment at the time in Marina Del Rey, when I was in college, I told her, I was like, I think I'm supposed to be a storyteller. And I went that night, I wrote a treatment for a film called My Brother's Keeper. And ever since then, man, it's been all about the words to some degree. We can talk about the different paths, I guess, that I went in beyond that. But that's kind of like the short version of how it all led to Scream.
No, that's incredible. And the names that you're bringing up, I am like, I remember the faces, the names, Mr. Hafley, and
Yeah.
another person that we definitely will remember the face and the name of is one Adam Skip Causey,
Oh,
and he says, "Brother Avan." I mean, this is a Inglewood High School 2003 reunion right here.
oh, Skip. Skip is in the building or no? He just.
Yeah, man, he's out in Vegas and
Oh,
doing well.
he's got the
Yep,
comment.
absolutely.
Hey, Skip was my man, bro. Back in the day, again, when I was in high school, I was really big on the Jesus tip. Not that I'm not anymore, but pause. Like I was really big on just loving God and Christ and everything. I think you remember that. They used to call me Rev back in high school.
Yep.
But Skip, Adam was the only person that called me preach, man. Every time I saw him, he'd be like, preach! Just randomly. That was my guy, man. Kazi was the man. He was pretty popular back then.
No, absolutely. I mean, football player, obviously the more aesthetically appeasing Adam in the bunch.
Yeah, girls,
But him and Lawrence Jackson, and you saw what he ended up becoming in his life and career and what he's still doing, and it's just like those two were like two of the football players that kind of defied, what the quintessential stereotype of a football player,
Yeah.
They were very like you, introspective, very forethought. I mean, they even in the jokes. I mean, I think it was Lawrence who was actually class clown in our yearbook, and he went on to play in the NFL and set all types of records in USC. So it's amazing what us kind of class of 03ers ended up doing.
Yeah, man. Lawrence, better known as Cadillac back then, because he was out there smacking them around on that football field. But one of the things about Mr. Jackson, that guy was a poet, man. He, as you said, he completely defied the idea of a jock, especially a black athlete jock back then. Again, all of us growing up in Inglewood, dealing with the things that we were dealing with, and still being, kids that were loving and grooving and all these different types of things, moving the way we were moving. Lawrence was he was a poet, man. I remember one time I was, because I don't draw or paint as much as I used to, but I remember doing this painting and in one of our classes, and while I was working on it, he was sitting right next to me, man, and he was just like, bro, like, I don't know how you're doing what you do. It looks just like it was, and sadly, of God bless the dead, it was a tribute to Kobe Bryant. Yeah, and it was with the three championships. It was literally the cover of I think it was a Slam magazine cover. Anyway, I'm gonna get emotional talking about Kobe, but he was sitting there, man, and he just, the way he talked about art and the way he talked about music, and even what was going on in the neighborhood. He kind of was like a high school version of Kareem, like he was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was just different like that. So yeah, man, memories. I hadn't thought about this stuff in years.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam basically confirmed, yep, we called you preach 100%. And he says, you guys are both awesome. Nah, you are, good sir. And I hope
Yeah,
you and
he's
the
great.
family are well out in Vegas, right? We echo those sentiments.
Yeah, man, he's great. Kazi's always 100% my man, day one.
100%. And yeah, Ivan Wolf, again, he's tearing it up on the jiu-jitsu scene, also graduated with us, but he's like Inglewood talent. And he knows because you're one of them, Ivan. So I'm just saying, same thing with you, Skip. And he also says, Lack was very deep, so.
I haven't talked to him in years. I saw him one time years ago at a bar in Manhattan Beach. I think he was playing for the Seattle Seahawks at the time, and it was a club, and it wasn't really a club. It was a bar, and everybody's doing their thing. But even in this bar setting, man, he was just this cool breeze in there, man, just kind of sitting back, taking it all in. Everybody else is, rambunctious and all that kind of stuff. But he would, like you said, man, he was a deep brother, man. I haven't talked to him in years. God bless him. I'm pretty sure he's doing his thing still. But '03, man. I think when it's all said and done, and I mean this, like when it's all said and done, people gonna have to put some respect on the products that came out of Inglewood High School in the class of 2003. You know what I mean? Obviously, right now, our class president, Mr. Daniel D. Smoke Ferris, is killing the game right now. I am so proud of that brother. I always had my own personal sort of rivalry with him from an academic perspective. It wasn't even close because he was like a 4.0 guy. But he was, man, old friend for sure. But he's doing his thing right now, man. I love what he's doing, and I love what he stands for. I love the way he's bringing coaches together. His album is incredible. If you haven't heard it, please check it out. Yeah, we I think when it's all said and done, man, 2003 is going to have to be reckoned with a lot of people.
No, 100%. And here's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but when it's a process, right? And trying
Yeah,
to figure out what your purpose is, and
yeah,
basically doing this, right?
yeah.
You and Lawrence, and I mean, there was a bunch of you that I was looking at peripherally and seeing what you guys were doing on social media, and I'm all like, you know what? I just want to earn my place at the table. You guys were it. Very much. We're all the same age, but I mean, to me, my big brothers, and I'm all like, I just want to, when it's all said and done, and we're all able to kind of, pop beers and whatever, and kick our feet
Right.
up a little bit, that I've
Mm-hmm.
earned my place, not just because, hey, we shared stories, decades ago, but like in terms of work ethic and what have you, just to kind of be in not equal. I wouldn't say equal, but
Man, listen, it's not even about that. Let me say this. One of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, one is because I've jumped in and out periodically, as you've done a few of them, probably maybe two or three of them, and I love what you're doing, man. For me, it's not even about, and I get what you mean. Earning your keep and all the other kind of stuff. But that's what I'm saying. Like everybody from our our class, man, one way or another, we're making our own individual stamps on the culture, right? And I think a lot of times what you'll have is you may have one or two that kind of come out of a city, come out of a high school. Obviously, prior to us, the biggest thing to come out of Inglewood High School was Paul Pierce. Um, but I think that you know, um, each of us are doing what we do as best we can. We're bringing our passions to it. We're bringing our spirits to it in a way that I think is incredible. Like I said, for me, this was a no-brainer. As soon as you sent me the message, I was like, oh, it was a no-brainer because I want to be a part of your story as well. You know what I mean? Like I want to be able to say that I was on your podcast. You know what I mean? As you're on your rise and having all these interviews with all these incredible people that are Hall of Famers in their own right. So for me, it was like, I mean, I need I need to be a notch on his belt in that respect.
Ah, man, I'm choked up because this is, this is a conversation supposed to be about, promoting your boy, but like I think somebody's cutting onions for sure,
Well,
and with what you said, and then Adam over here, you guys are double teaming me, a la Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. He was like, Adam, you're always going to be tied to MMA one way or another. You're all about wrestling back in the day. You never gave up on that dream. Thank
absolutely,
you, Adam. And that's the
absolutely,
other thing, of course, like
absolutely.
not just entertainment or the names that we know. How many fathers and mothers and I just talked to Elvia Gomez and who also graduated with us. Yeah,
Yeah.
and her son just found out, unfortunately, that I wouldn't say unfortunate because he's going to battle through it, but
Mm,
he basically got diagnosed with leukemia 2 weeks ago, and we had him on last week, and it's just like the amount of fight, and that's the thing
yeah.
about it. Whether it be you, Avan, whether it be Skip, whether it be Lack. All of these guys and girls, how many nurses, Florence Quinto is a nurse, and like, there's so many things and ways that we're putting our tentacles out
Mm,
into the world,
yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
like making an impact in our individual environments,
Yeah.
and being there for our kids, and making sure that you know basically, I don't want to say like carrying it on our back, but like
Yeah.
making sure that I almost cringe every time when I say like Inglewood, and everybody's all like, oh, up to no good, and it's almost like a call and response thing, and I'm all like, no, 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 I'm going to, uh, after our conversation, after our interaction, I'm going to leave you, and that thing, that euphemism is going to leave your mind, your body, and your soul until
Mm,
the next time you hear the song.
yeah. Well, hey, listen, man, I love everything you just said, and not to be flippant, but my prayers to Elvia's son, and the battle and fight that he's going to be victorious in. All of us are bringing our strength, our energies, our love, and our compassion to his fight. He is the son of a fighter. He's the son of a warrior, and so I believe that he will be victorious in his fight against leukemia. Um, as far as the Inglewood up to no good moniker, I've heard it over and over and over again, and I get its cultural significance from a music standpoint and even from a global standpoint because we come from a city that's recognized around the world. There aren't many cities like the one that we come from that no matter where you go in the world, people know that city. We ain't gonna get it. We don't have to get into any other ones because we from Inglewood, so that's what it is. But I will say that I think that the soil that we come from, you know what I mean, and the streets that we had to navigate growing up in that city prepared us for the ultimate fight. You know what I'm saying? And whether we were physical fighters back in the day, you know what I mean, doing that whole thing, whether we come from that or whether we come from the cloth that says I'm going to fight with this, you know what I'm saying, and I'm going to fight with this. Um, Either regardless of where we come from in that respect, I think that those of us who learned how to use those of us who learned how to use these, those of us who learned how to use all of our senses to fight against what we're currently fighting is as a result of a lot of what we experienced growing up. And at the same time, like you said, man, Inglewood, there was a lot of joy there too. It wasn't all, what everybody else likes to think that it is, what, some movies present it to be. You know what I mean? I think the film that came out when we were in junior high school, The Wood, was one of the best depictions of our experience. Like, yeah, there's this, but there's also this. You know what I'm saying? And so, like I said, when it's all said and done, bro, I really believe that, despite the gentrification and craziness that's happening in our city right now, relative to what they're doing, because it doesn't feel much like home anymore. I don't know if you've been through there or if you still live there or not. But all I can say is that there, the city still has us to hold up its true meaning, its true spirit, and we, I know for sure that there are a lot of us that are fighting for that city to remain what it is, and for the people who live there to be able to live there peacefully and happily, man, and not be pushed out by, raising prices and all the stuff that comes with that whole craziness.
Yeah, it's weird, because it's a zero sum game. Because I mean, this is obviously pre-COVID. I was actually very much looking forward to the fact that I was going to be able to next year attend my first WrestleMania, literally feet away from where I graduated, where we had our high school commencement ceremony, which is weird to say.
Yeah. Hey, listen, the Forum will forever be marked by us. Period. Point blank. I think we were the last class to graduate there too, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if there was a class that graduated at the Forum after us. I think we were the last one. Again, that's what I'm saying, man. Class of 03, man, forever is etched in the history of Inglewood, period. Point blank. And so I agree with you, man. I mean, I haven't watched football in well, probably going on 5 years now. But I too was looking forward to at least being able to go to a boxing match in that arena. You know what I mean? Because I'm a fight fan. But like you said, man, literally, just a few yards away from where we walked the stage.
Yeah, it's just weird, And again, yeah, and Skip basically confirmed. Yep, the last class was us. That's it, And I remember, whether it be, and they don't have it now because obviously Prince shattered that record. But before, you remember the box office, there was 2 bronze plaque about 4 feet tall that cemented, like, Phil Collins had essentially had the most consecutive sellouts at the Forum.
Yeah.
Up until that point, right? And I remember looking at that on graduation day. I remember, looking from the stage all the way up to, the retired jerseys of Jerry West, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and looking like, okay, like, I think I'm going to the Air Force, but like, that's what I have to contend with in this arena. So, might think that this 4-year ride or whatever happened, but that's what we have to contend with, and that was something that was an indelible mark, if anything, on me. And hopefully one of these days, as you can shoot a film there, or my microphone could be featured somewhere there alongside Ted Turn.
We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna stick a pin in it right there. We're gonna make that happen. So it's live right now. We're gonna make that happen. I will say this, man. Manifestation is a very real thing. It's a very real thing. We graduated in a stadium that was built on greatness, right? That was literally built on the idea that if you put in the work, if you make the sacrifices, and if you hone your craft, then the ultimate prize can and will be yours. And for a lot of the Showtime teams that played during that era, led by Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that ended up in 5 championships. But ultimately, it ended up with their jerseys hanging up in the rafters in my opinion, in the greatest stadium in the country. Period. Point blank. I don't care what anybody says. Having said that, uh, I remember. It's funny you mentioned Prince, and it's funny you mentioned Magic Johnson. I'll tell you why for both reasons. With Prince, I remember a friend of mine got married in Las Vegas a few years back, and I remember us sitting at a table and we were just talking about who we would want to see perform before we died. I don't know why, but that's what we were talking about. And Prince for me was like, I was like, I gotta see Prince. Like, parents have seen Prince. I got other family members and friends that have seen him. Like, I have to see this man perform. And I want to say it was less than 2 months later, man, he announced his residency for the Forum. And I was there for the first night, bro, and it was electric. And we were there. The beautiful part about it, I think that was the night that he kicked Kim Kardashian off the stage, if I'm not mistaken. She wouldn't dance, so he was like, "You got to get up." But he did 3 encores that night, and we didn't leave that stadium until almost 4 o'clock in the morning. Man, it was a spiritual experience unlike anything I've ever been a party to or witnessed. I've seen Jay-Z perform. I've seen Mary J. Blige perform. I've seen some of the best do it. And that one takes the cake, period. Even if he was still here, it's not because he's not with us anymore. If he were still here, I would still say it was the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. So that was one thing. But you mentioned Magic Johnson, man. When I graduated from high school, I was in his scholarship program. So I went from Inglewood High School, graduating in the Forum where he built the Showtime era, to working for this man. I'll fast forward. I went to being a part of his scholarship program. I did that for 4 years, man. And the last year that I was there, I made sure he knew who I was, man. Every time I saw him, I asked him a question. I did my homework before he would come, so I knew what to pose to him and how to pose it. And I remember one of the questions I asked him was, if somebody wanted to sell you a movie, this is after I knew I wanted to be a writer, what would it take? He said, well, you got to write a dope script. He said, and once you write a dope script, you send it to my company. And if it's good, we'll pay you a lot of money for it, and then we'll make it. Now, this is back when he was still in the business of making films. And so my last year in the program, we became really, really cool in that sense of him knowing me as the person who asked a million questions and demanded a million answers in the coolest way possible. And I want to say a year out of college, man, I ended up working for him. And I worked for that man for 5 years, bro. And I sat at the table. And when I tell you, it was the best 5 years leading up to these years of my life. I mean, he's the one he's the one that pushed me into actually pursuing screenwriting. We talk about that too, but yeah, I worked for him for 5 years. It was a beautiful thing.
That's sick. That's really sick. And again, just again, the hollowed walls of the Forum. It's something, because I mean, obviously we can look at, like, the Showtime era, the first incarnation of the greatness that Kobe ended up becoming. But I mean, you got to remember, Gretzky, that was his home. The Michael Jordan of hockey. Played here in LA at the Forum. The Sparks, Lisa Leslie, her rookie season was right there. I remember going to games with her and the Sparks against like Rebecca Lobo and the New York Liberty and all that jazz. And and it's like, and again, Lisa Leslie, Hall of Famer, Rebecca Lobo, Hall of Famer, right? So all of these first ballot Hall of Famers that basically cut their teeth in a place where we kind of got an ascension for the next phase of our life, and we, again, it was almost like a I guess like a 900 gorilla on my back, for sure, to kind of, same deal, to be in that conversation, to kind of our keep, and it was, you mentioned like the Prince residency, and I kind of know the innards because my mom had having worked for City Hall,
Hmm.
but he basically did that. You remember the reason why we graduated from the Forum was because Faithful Central essentially bought it out of bankruptcy. You
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
so Prince did that residency. He flew in his band, everything. Like he paid for everything.
Wow. I didn't
Faithful
know.
Central basically took a financial loss
Yeah.
because there was a period of time, a little over a decade, where they were just like, well, we're a church. We're not going to
Hmm.
have any secular acts. You
Hmm.
would see Franklin and whatever,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
they had been in such a negative financial windfall that
Hmm.
Prince saw that, and he a devout like Jehovah's Witness and whatever, and he was just like, you
Yeah.
know what? He called up, I think it was like Kenneth Omer or whatever, and
Mhm.
he basically laid it out, and they got it done within like maybe within a month's time, and yeah, and the only thing that he kind of got as like I guess as like a rose in the cap or a feather in the cap, so to speak,
Mhm.
was the fact that he did basically annihilate Phil
Oh, yeah,
Collins,
record.
but he
Yeah.
didn't want anything. He took not one dime. He paid his band. He paid all the set people and all that jazz. And I mean, that's something that was echoed to me because I covered like the
Hmm.
Tito Ortiz Chuck Liddell 3 weigh-ins
Okay.
right there, and one of the ushers. We just got to talking, and we were talking to
No.
Tito Ortiz and whatever. And literally, I was just like, I graduated like right here, and we all kind of laughed about it. But he basically echoed that sentiment that Prince paid for
Wow.
everything. I mean, even the ushers, the concession people took not one dime. All bits of profit that could happen to the artists went
Hmm.
right into Faithful Central. So that just shows you.
He was a prince of a man. I think if I remember correctly, he was selling tickets. My ticket was like $25. And I remember him also saying at that time that he was upset with how the industry were essentially just like they, the real fans couldn't go see concerts because the ticket prices were so ridiculously high. And so he wanted to give a show to the real fans at a price that they could afford. And I mean, it was a spiritual and beautiful experience. Like I said, it was unlike anything I've ever experienced. So to know that, I mean, he was a prince of a man anyway, no pun intended. I don't think we'll ever really know just how much he did off the books, if you will. I think Van Jones at one point in time was talking about some of the things that Prince was known to do that he just didn't want people to know he was doing, just because it wasn't about that for him. It really was about helping people, and that's what I'm all about. I mean, that's what my films are about. That's what my mission is, man. It's not about me. It's not even about receiving a certain level of acclaim or adulation like that. That's a byproduct of potentially doing something incredibly well, and at the same time people liking you, you know what I mean, for doing it. For me, quite literally, it is about reshaping mindsets, and the only way you can do that is through disruptive narratives, through narratives that cause people to think outside the box, outside of the self that they have grown up in, that has been conditioned by a lot of what they see, a lot of what they hear. And so, my mission is in service of humanity, particularly people that look like you and me. So I 100% can empathize, understand, and love all that Prince stood for in that respect.
No, 100%. And again, talking about shaping, the misconception that most people outwardly kind of have of us, and also shaping, reshaping the kind of expectations that we as men of color
Yeah,
and young men of color, what
yeah,
we once were.
yeah.
You've essentially done that, and what I really want to know is what, like, at what point, because obviously I don't remember when you were going to like, what was it, AIU, right?
Sadly, yes.
Yes, right. So I don't remember
Man,
screenwriting or anything like that being in the
no,
curriculum.
no.
um so at what point, I mean, did you kind of like obviously there was the crash, and Steven Soderbergh is such a visionary, right? Because like not only did he do that, but I mean he was I think it was about a year or two ago where it was said that he wanted just to film a full length film on just like an iPhone, exactly, because he wanted to show people, almost a la Robert Rodriguez and
Yeah,
the Troublemaker Studio deal, that
yeah.
you don't have to have a huge capital. You can work with what you have, and if you've got a vision, you can execute it the best way you can. So, at what point did it transfer over? Because obviously you were at AIU, but when did you go like, oh wait, let me pursue this?
So, as I told you, like you said, I my third year at the uh, the aforementioned AIU, I discovered, yeah, I discovered that I wanted to be a writer. And at that point, it was a little too late to change a major. The reality was they didn't even have a major that could facilitate that anyway. And so I remember reaching out to a few different people that I knew that were in that space of writing. And, got some tips here and there. And like I said, right out of college, pretty much, I started working for Magic Johnson. And in working for him, every day I worked for him, it became less and less about writing because, I was literally sitting at the feet of a man that had owned 121 Starbucks, that had, I think, approximately, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this, around 40 24-hour Magic Sport 24-hour fitnesses across the country. This man had Magic Johnson theaters in what people would call the hood in the middle of the jungle. On King, which I believe is now known as Obama Boulevard or something like that in that
Yeah.
area. And so, I was working with this man and I was able to see the level of work ethic that he has, as far as I know, is bar none. He is a workaholic and he knows what he wants. He's a man about the vision. And one of the things that he impressed upon me always was to over deliver. Know who your audience is, know what they want, know how they want it, and then you over deliver on everything that they expect to receive. And so I learned how to be a businessman in large part by working for him and seeing how he handled business on a day-to-day basis. But in the last year that I worked for him, this was when President Obama became president, and the recession happened. And many countries, many companies were laying people off left and right. And so, Mr. Johnson's company was not unlike other companies that had to make some really tough decisions. And I was in the first wave of those decisions. I was told I was going to be laid off. And this was maybe 2 weeks after he and I had a conversation. We were flying back from Las Vegas. It was a speaking engagement. And to this day, I've never seen anybody move about a crowd. The name is synonymous with the man. He is magic incarnate. And hopefully, I was able to get a little bit of that pixie dust. But I remember we were flying back from Las Vegas, which is not a long flight, about 30 minutes on his jet. And he asked me a question, and I kind of thought it was a trick question. He said, what do you want to do? I'm like, what do you mean I want to do? I'm sitting on a private jet with you. We're flying back from Las Vegas. I just witnessed you mesmerize a crowd of had to have been at least 7,000 people, maybe more than that. I might be underestimating, more like 10,000 people. I have your phone number. We talk. You're a mentor. We're a friend. What else could I possibly want to do? I'm 20. I think at the time I was 25, 26. It's like I'm working for the man who I grew up idolizing in a lot of respects, as an Inglewood native. Again, we graduated in the house that he built, you know what I mean, through the Showtime era. So there was nothing else I could imagine doing at the time. And to be quite honest and quite frank, writing was the furthest thing from my mind at that point, because I had fallen in love with the lore of what I was experiencing on a day-to-day basis working for him. And I remember him saying to me, no, man, just, tell me what you really want to do. And I'm like, oh, we're having a real conversation here. Like, well, I said, I want to tell stories. I want to make films. I want to write stories that you produce that change the world and change perception and yada, yada, yada. And I said that and he got quiet for like 10 seconds. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, can I curse on my bed? I don't mean to cuss on your podcast. So I'm like, oh, man, I completely screwed this one up. And he said shortly thereafter, you should go do that. And then he didn't say anything else for the rest of the flight. And I'm like, oh, man, I'd have messed this whole thing up. We get off the plane, we get in this car, we're driving this truck at the time. We're driving back to the office in the Wilshire area. And he didn't say anything the whole way to the office, man. I was just like, yo, this is completely screwed this up. 2 weeks later, I get the layoff notice, getting laid off. Now, I remember going to the COO of the company at the time and saying, hey, you guys are making a mistake. You don't want to let me go. I'm the youngest person in your company to ever do this. Youngest company person. I think at the time I had pitched like a $5 million deal for a Colgate endorsement to him, I don't want to say her name, to the COO at the time of the company. I think she's still the COO and president. I'm like, you guys are making a mistake. Why would you want to let me go? Ultimately, they decided to keep me for another 6 months before they finally let me go. Now, here's the thing. When they let me go, I was pissed, bro. I was hot. I didn't give a damn about it being a recession. I didn't care about budget cuts. I felt like I had done enough in that company to earn my keep and to stay, really. And I remember sitting at home, and this is back when he was on TNT with Charles Barkley and Kenny the Jet and Ernie. I remember sitting there watching him on the TV, 32 teeth, 1,000-watt smile, everybody knows him for. He was so happy, and I was so pissed. And I remember sitting there saying to myself, why are you sitting here upset when he's sitting there happy? You told this man you wanted to be a writer. You've been sitting at home for 2 or 3 months, just moping and all this other kind of stuff. Why don't you just do what you said you told him you want to do? What you've been telling the world. Every time anybody asked me what I did, I tell them I was a writer and I worked for Magic Johnson. Even though I wasn't writing anything, this was about a 7-year period from the time I had found out that I wanted to be a writer, when I had my epiphany in the dark. And that night, I made a decision that from that day forward, everything that I did was going to be in the direction of living my dream, which was to be a storyteller. And the first thing that I had to do was learn how to tell a story. Excuse me for being long-winded. I applied to Cal State Northridge, the graduate program. And one of the requirements was that I had to have a couple letters of recommendation. So, of course, I called Mr. Johnson, who I affectionately know as Uncle Urban. I called him and I said, hey, man, I need a letter of recommendation. I'm trying to get into grad school for screenwriting, trying to live out the dream. He said, look, you write it. If I like it, I'll sign it, right? So I wrote my letter of recommendation. I took it to him. He liked it. He signed it. At the time, the first script that I had written over that summer, prior to even sending in my application, was a script called A Dream Deferred, about a kid who discovers that he wants to be an actor in his 3rd year of college, right? Kind of mirroring my own sort of experience. The story takes place in New York. Maybe one day I'll actually make it. I don't know. But that script, along with a short film that I had filmed called The Morning After, and his letter of recommendation, I believe, got me into the school. And I still, to this day, I have my acceptance letter framed, and it's in storage right now. But I went to his office one day, and I think it was during the Final Four or something like that, maybe the Elite Eight. And he was in his office, he was watching it. And I'm sitting there with him, and he was like, "Man, you sitting here, you're not saying anything. You look like you want to say something. What's going on?" And so, you know, I'm thinking, I was like, I'm not trying to disturb you from watching the game. I'm watching basketball with you, again, living a dream, you know, watching the Elite Eight with national champion, you know what I mean, for Michigan, University of Michigan. Um, I'm sorry, Michigan State. He would kill me for saying that. Michigan State. Uh, but anyway, I said, look, I just came to say thank you because if you hadn't have fired me, a few months back, I would have never decided to live my dream. I wouldn't have applied to grad school. I wouldn't have been accepted because I wouldn't have applied. And I promise you, man, to this day, I always get a little emotional, but I'm not going to do that right now. When I said that to him, this is Magic Johnson. His eyes got watery, literally, and tears welled up in his eyes. And he said he took a breath, and he said to me, "God showed you that." He said because because keeping you here would have been like somebody keeping a basketball out of my hands. I was meant to play basketball, and you were meant to tell stories. And so I had to push you out of here so that you can go do what you were supposed to do. And to this day, man, I mean, he's been an incredible friend and mentor. And so that's, I mean, that long version is how, how this whole thing sort of really got started in the vision of writing and going to see Sun and learning from who I feel was the best teachers on the planet to hone this craft called storytelling.
Man, and don't forgive, this is a podcast, so be as long-winded because I want people, again, we are here to talk about the night they came, but I mean, the night that came is a culmination of many stories, many experiences that you've had as a person, many experiences that you saw peripheral in other people and what have you. So it all relates, and hopefully after people watch this and not just the film but this podcast, they come away with the sense of like knowing who they are, just like knowing who Magic Johnson is, because I mean the likelihood of anybody, actually getting to sit down and chat with him and get, like, it's crazy to me just to think about, like, after you were let go and laid off, that you had, most people would say gall, but you had the determination to get a recommendation letter from this man, and it, you're giving people a side of, not just the industry, but of the man, the myth, the legend, and that, his influence on you. So, that's it. It takes time to get these stories out because, again, these all kind of attributed in some small way to where you are now and what you've done thus far, and some larger, some smaller, but, they all have their place.
Absolutely. I mean, he is a pivotal and seminal character in the overall film that will be whatever Avan Hardwell. You know what I mean? Like, the story cannot be told without him. You know what I mean? Like if we were to put it in film terms, the inciting incident, which is usually the story that gets the story going. You know what I mean? Excuse me. The inciting incident for me was me sitting in the movie theater and seeing Crash for the first time, and that being the first time that I thought of myself as a storyteller, or the possibilities. The turn into Act 2, which is usually the largest part of any film. It's the part where Neo goes from the regular world into the Matrix, right? That part where he literally takes the pill, and everything changes after that. And it's all about the Matrix and beyond. That's kind of what it was for me. Like he was at that point Morpheus pushing me into, well, not even pushing me, giving me an opportunity to decide, either you're going to sit here and sulk, and anger and frustration about me letting you go from a job that, yeah, you did a great job at it, but it's not who you're supposed to be. You know what I mean? You're supposed to be a writer. You're supposed to be a filmmaker. At the time, I didn't think of myself as a director. That came later. But I would not be on this path had he not pushed me out the nest.
That's incredible. And even that, again, the 25 steps ahead that you always seem to be, you
Mm.
know, most people would, after getting laid off and, especially, working the deals that you did during your tenure with his company and, would see him on TNT, and go, he's smiling. I'm not. He has a job. I don't. And begrudge the whole thing, begrudge the
Yeah,
whole experience. Don't want to see a Magic Johnson jersey in one iota, but
yeah,
you kind of
yeah.
flipped it on its head and you were like, no, 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 no. Like, he's happy. I should be happy, and kind of like emit that magic dust, so to speak, that he left on you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that his older brother is my mentor as well, and has been my sponsor for going on 6 years now. But he used to always tell me, he said, your Uncle Irvin, one of the things that he loves about you is that you're a go getter, right? You see what you want, you figure out the patterns, and then you decide and you go make it happen. And I've kind of always had that part of me, but I will say that it was definitely honed and working for him, and even more so after. You know what I mean? Because like I said, even when you graduate from grad school, it's cool learning how to tell stories and being in the company of other people who write and they look at you, and I don't mean this in any form of hubris, but I was for sure one of the top 2 or 3 writers in my graduating class without question. And so you can get very comfortable in that 2-year space where you're like, everybody knows who you are, everybody recognizes your writing style, people are like, they love your notes, you have professors asking you to be an assistant in their class, to teach in certain respects. Like, you can get comfortable in that, and then when you graduate and you walk that stage, and now you actually got to go put this stuff into action. That's a whole nother thing. I graduated in 2015, so it's been 5 years even since then in the making. You know what I mean? So it has definitely been a steady climb. You know what I mean? All incline for sure.
No, and it's crazy because, again, I'm learning about obviously the path and the journey that brought us here, because, again, this is an exceptional film, but
Thank you.
I just, at what point, like, 2015 you graduate, obviously there had to be like some inclination. You had basically, wrote a treatment, so to speak, or film, and shot a film,
Mm-hmm.
and presented it for your inclusion in that
Mm-hmm.
graduate program at Northridge, at Cal
Yeah.
State Northridge. But, like, where did it percolate that, like, this is the story that I want to tell in, the night they came? Because, again, there's a lot of things that are floating and percolating in that space between your ears, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you want to speak your heart into,
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I'm kind of like, I'm kind of enthralled by, because there were so many stories that you could have told, and the
Mm-hmm.
one that you told, and the setting, which wasn't too different than what we grew up around.
Absolutely.
Like, why did that story kind of, like, why was that the one?
Well, again, that story was, I have to say, uh, I said 17 years in the making, but I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm 35. I wrote my first story when I was 5 years old with my father present. So I would have to modify my statement and say it's 30. It's been 30 years in the making, even if I didn't know it until 3 or 4 years ago. But there were a couple very close people that I lost in the last 10 years of my life. One man by the name of Bishop Gregory L. Dixon. He was the pastor of of First Church of God in Inglewood on Crenshaw on 95th. That man had a profound effect on my life. As I said earlier, my parents got divorced when I was 6 years old. And so my relationship growing up with my father wasn't necessarily the greatest one, but it's not unlike any other, young man who grows up to some degree without the father present 100% of the time. When he was available, he was very present, and when he wasn't, he wasn't. But Pop Dixon, I call him, had a very profound effect on me growing up, which is why, in the time that you knew me from junior highs, particularly in high school, there was such a profound desire and inclination to go down the line of seminary and church and pastoring and all that kind of stuff. Because he played a big part. Obviously, that changed once I learned that I wanted to be a writer, and that was that. But he passed some time ago, and that really affected me. And our last conversation really affected me because it was about my desire to be a writer, and it was about how he felt about me becoming a writer. As you know, like you said, Bishop Ulmer, when they bought Faithful Central, or when Faithful Central bought the Forum, secular acts wasn't something that they were really open to. And so my last conversation, which I've really never publicly talked about, but my last conversation with Pop Dixon had to do with that very fact, that if I was going to be a writer, that the content in one way or shape or form needed to build the kingdom, as the Christian faith talks about, and not necessarily take away from the kingdom by creating secular content that did not uplift God. And so that was a very tough conversation for me, because I knew there were a wide range of stories that I wanted to tell, some of them of the faith and some of them not. And then fast forward, my godmother, who I love dearly, Pearl Reed, also somebody that had a very profound impact on me from that same church. She passed, I want to say now it's been 2 years, maybe 3. And I remember driving by her place with a person who I was dating at the time and saying, "Oh, my godmother lives here. I haven't seen her in a while. I need to visit her." And I want to say less than a month and a half later, I got a call that she had passed, and it broke me, man. It was tough. So here you have these two individuals who were pillars in the maturing adolescence of myself growing up into a man in various ways. And at the time, I didn't know how to communicate my pain and my desire to speak with them at least just one more time. Right. And so I kind of dealt with that for a little while. And then I don't know if you remember the event that happened in California that made everybody think that we were having a UFO visitation. And that was the SpaceX launch that everybody thought was like, what the hell is that in the sky? And I remember I cut hair to support the dream. I remember being in the shop and everybody running out and in of the shop in pure pandemonium, like, yo, it's UFOs in the sky. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I kept cutting. I wasn't thinking about it. And when I finally had a chance to sit down and see what everybody was talking about, something clicked. I saw a narrative opportunity. I said, if Steven Spielberg had saw this back in the 80s or the 70s or the 70s, he would have figured out a way to make that into a film. With the technology that he had at the time, he would have figured out how to turn that into a film. And I said, if Spielberg would have figured out how to turn it into a film, I've got to figure out how to turn that into a film. And so through a cosmic, gumbo of universal greatness and goodness, the universe gifted me with ultimately The Night They Came, about a kid who desires to, who loses his father and is dealing with grief, and decides to finish a work that he discovers so that he could talk to his father one more time and hopefully be able to help his mother in the process, growing up in Compton. And that's that's the genesis of the story.
That's incredible because I mean, technically it's a short film, 15 minutes long,
Yeah,
but there's so many like the kind of importance of the Rubik's cube, and yes, he's got like there was so many. There's so much, like you said, this like the cosmic gumbo. There's
yeah,
so much that you kind of whether it be imagery or places of importance that you
yeah,
kind of there's a like I left wanting more. I was just like,
yeah, yeah.
that's it, and that's the mark of a great entertainer is you want your audience wanting more. As kids, we wanted more wrestling, more wrestling. Now it's three
Absolutely.
hours,
Yeah,
8 hours on Raw, 2 hours on SmackDown, and I haven't watched in years.
yeah,
Um, so sometimes it's like I guess a little oversaturation. That's
yeah.
not something that you get from the night they came.
Wow, I appreciate that, man. I mean, that you mentioned the Rubik's cube. The story. Well, one of the main things that was important to me when I was developing the film was that, again, as I mentioned earlier, the Goonies, E.T., Close Encounters, and even most recently Super 8, which is one of my favorite films. The one thing that they all have in common is that we're not in it, right? We're not in it, and that's no shade at Spielberg or Abrams, or I don't know I can't remember who is the mind or the visionary behind the Goonies. That's no shade at them because those two individuals, particularly Spielberg, are incredible influences on me narratively and cinematically in terms of what I hope to achieve through the lens. I'm reading books right now, interviews that Spielberg did, along the way, George Lucas, all these individuals. But again, um, those films that I named, they didn't have us in it. And I oftentimes remember thinking to myself, like, man, as a kid, I used to want to be able to go out and explore the way we would see in these films where people, they just get on their bikes and they ride wherever they want, and they go on these incredible missions and these incredible adventures that would lead to the wonder and the escape that we were able to experience as kids growing up. But then it was like, well, growing up where we grew up, it was like our parents were like, well, you could only ride your bike so far because of the different things that were going on in the city. There was always this before the lights come on idea, and there were all these limitations that we had because of, and not to get political, but because of the color of our skin and all the different things that we could potentially get into or the things that could happen to us by way of the cities that we grew up in. And so I wanted to present a narrative that showed a brilliant, smart, savant of a kid, almost in a Peter Parker sense, that came from the cities that we come from. It just so happens that in this story, it's the city of Compton. And the reason it was the city of Compton is because I also have roots there. My grandparents were among the first families to buy a house in the city of Compton, back when they used to have what they called these, can't remember what it's called right now, but they had these packs where Black people weren't even allowed to drive through the city of Compton, let alone live in the city of Compton. There's a gentleman right now that a writer who's got a show that's coming that deals with that in a very Get Out kind of way. I can't wait for it to come out. But my grandparents were among the first Black families in Compton. I think they bought their house back in the late 50s, 1959 to be exact. And I think the first Black family to own a home in Compton, I want to say was around 1954, 56, somewhere around there. So anyway, the home that's featured in The Night They Came is my grandparents' home. It's the home that I grew up in, that I spent sleepovers at, and that I had fights on the front porch with cousins and all this other kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So that home has a lot of sentimental value to me. And, you know, I have yet to sort of achieve what I believe all will, and by achieve, I mean, again, in service of humanity and the culture, quite specifically people that look like you and I, and anyone else that decides to jump on board. Um, for me, it was like if the Lawrence Jacksons of the world can come out of Inglewood, if the D Smokes can come out of Inglewood, if the Adam Woods, the Adam Cosby, the Skips of the world, like if we could come out of Inglewood with the minds that we had and the experiences that we also, the shared experiences that we had, then surely a narrative could be created with that in mind. And I really wanted for the first time to show a kid that was smart and had no idea how smart he actually was because he kind of grew up in a sheltered experience. I wanted to show that. I wanted to show Black love. I wanted to show, I don't know, man. There were so many things that I wanted to show with The Night They Came.
No, but I mean, I definitely felt it. I definitely felt it. And again, there's so many like it's something that I've actually watched like 3 times.
Wow. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, and I took it totally out of context. Like if it weren't you, that's the way that I went into it the first time that I saw it. I was like, okay, if I don't know it and I just watch this film, how do I feel about it, right? And so I went there, right? And then I'm all like, okay, we were acquaintances second time, right? I kind of did that retrain my brain, right? And I was like, and then by the third time, I was like, this is the dude that he and I were going to be tag team champions of the world. You know, he met my wife when we were dating 1 week, and all of those emotions and then picking out different things, and, I lost my parents in, my dad in, Christmas morning of 2010, and that right there in Northridge, right where you are. And then my mom, December 4th of 2013 in Inglewood, right? So, to see the young character kind of deal with his grief, and I mean, he was a little bit more like emotionally mature than I still am, in terms of his able to deal with grief and the grief of his father. I could not touch one of my dad was a musician. It took me a while. I had all of his equipment like in my closet. I couldn't even touch it for a while, right? In kind of my chest here, I found on eBay 2 of his albums. I paid $75 for 2 cassette tapes that my dad was basically selling in San Francisco for $10 a pop. In the 80s, early 90s, right? And it just struck me how emotionally mature. I mean, the character was about around 12, 13, something around that, which is again the age of my youngest son, and I'm all like, there was so many, like I've got goosebumps when I'm talking about it, but like there was so much in there, and there was, again, it's 15 minutes, but it left an indelible impact on me, and even a way that I view the world, and to some way kind of strengthen my parents' legacy, in the way that the hero of the story that was trying to do for his mom, that was trying to do for his maybe love interest, and yeah, and it was just like, and then that seminal figure of like the Rubik's cube, and that was something that my dad had given me to kind of get my mind out of things. So there was so much like, I guess you called it, mystical or cosmic gumbo, but there was like spiritual food. Like it was a buffet for me in a span of 15 minutes that, like, again, I just wanted more.
Wow. I mean, man, listen, thank you for everything you said. I mean, as I said, my parents got divorced when I was 6. And so the relationship between Jaden's character in The Night They Came and his father is one that is is and was aspirational for me, because the love that you see between that father and his son is as pure as a love between a father and son can be. The desire for a son to be like his father, to take the traits of his father, to perfect them, to embody them. All of those things were absolutely apparent to me in developing the story. And the other thing too was I really kind of wanted to dispel the narratives that we've been seeing for 10, 15, 20 plus years of absentee fathers in the lives of their children, particularly black fathers in the lives of their children, and even uh, as not so great husbands. And so that's not to say that doesn't exist, because obviously we know that it does, but we have to start creating balance in terms of what we seek, and that again is my goal through a disruptive way, and hopefully and I love the word that you used, which was spiritual food. This film is incredibly spiritual at heart, because without giving anything away, at the heart of Jaden's father's mission is a spiritual understanding that encompasses science, right? Because I think a lot of people think that they're separate, and I don't. I think that they live lockstep and key together, every single second of every minute and within every hour of every day. And so I'm so glad that it had that effect on you, because I'll be honest with you, man, and I'm going to be completely honest. The film sat for 2 years. It was done 2 years ago. It was done 2 years ago. I want to say more or less a year and a half ago. We filmed it August 25th. We finished, I think it was our last day of shooting, 2018. And we were done. The final edit was done, I want to say, within the first January 2019. So yeah, 2 years. It's been done for 2 years. And I it's funny because you make something, you're part of that magical experience, and it could not have been done without a lot of wonderful people sacrificing a lot, particularly my producing partner, Brandon Morrison, and his partner, KP. They believed in it very, very early, and we made the film. I mean, it started off with a $2,500 budget. Ultimately, it cost me nearly $10,000 to make, and there are a lot of people that contributed a lot, and it could have cost more, but a lot of people made a lot of sacrifices, and I lost my car in the process. I had a repo, you know what I mean? I was behind on rent maybe a couple months to make this film. But I believed in it, bro. Like it was go hard or go home. And I did that. And then after doing all of that, it literally sat in a vault, man, because I was insecure about whether or not people would get it, whether people would understand it, whether people would put two and two together, and it messed with my psyche. And I think before I had put it out, maybe a handful of people had seen the film, and they were like, "Oh man, it's great! Like, put it out." I'm like, in my mind, it was like, "Oh, you're my friends. What else are you gonna tell me?" So I went through that, and then one day it was just like, you know what, man, it's time. It's quarantine happened, and George Floyd happened, Ahmaud Arbery happened, Breonna Taylor happened, and it was just like those lives that were lost. There were going to be people that were grieving them in the way I was grieving my guy, the way I was grieving my Pop Dixon, the way you were grieving your father. You know what I mean? So it was like, you know what? I'm just going to put it out. Whatever happens, happens. And once I made the decision to put it out, I talked to my producing partner. We were like, all right, well, let's let's create a plan. And we created a plan that within less than a week, really a week prior to putting out, doing the first set of interviews. It had only been a week before we decided to put it out. And that's kind of what it was, man. But I'm so glad you said everything you said, because it really was about highlighting the love of a father between he and his son, highlighting the love of a husband and a wife that misses her husband and at the same time struggles with the memory of his loss, and having to parent a child alone in the city of Compton. Yeah, man, it's that film for me is important for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and it's crazy because again, even the depiction of Compton, it's a very sunny disposition, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way that you presented it in the film,
Mm-hmm.
and again, whether it be like Inglewood Up to Good or Straight Outta Compton, and all of
Yeah,
these negative kind of
absolutely.
connotations that people will have, kind of at first thought.
Yeah.
You don't really. Again, I don't want to give too much away, and I encourage everyone to watch. But I mean, there's no scary parts, especially with like the subject matter, until like almost the very end.
Right.
And I just
Right.
again, to me, I thought that was just masterful storytelling. And the fact that you guys were able to kind of encompass it in like 15 minutes. And it was just like, I felt like I'd been there longer, and I felt emotionally invested in all of the characters and what they were going to do. I didn't know what Jaden was going to do. The scene of him in his bed, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, I didn't know his thought process, his emotional maturity. There is, again, I watched it 3 times to kind of like get like this, and I still had questions at the end of it, and I was just like, to me, again, it's. I hope you're as proud of it as I am of you and this project, because, like, again, it's therapeutic. It's, um, the fact that they're really, and again, not to give too much away, but the interaction, right, is very minimal, but you felt the love of the family,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And within the characters, there's very minimal interaction, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, the fact that you could feel the loss, you can feel the pride, the joy, like there's literally the entire spectrum of emotions that you can
Yeah.
go through
Yeah.
while watching it, right?
Yeah.
And again, in terms of physical, yeah, and I think it's like pretty apropos, especially in this time where there's social distancing and norm and whatever, and we're trying to figure out how to make have people feel the love that we have for them, and
Yeah.
the appreciation, or
Yeah.
sometimes not even that, the other side of this spectrum, and like, oh, I really don't like you,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I just love the fact that you were able to, and again, 25 steps ahead, because in 2018 when you filmed it, and 2019, when you finished it, there's no way that you could have known,
Mm-hmm.
no way that you could have known what we were going to go through at the time that you released it. But
Right.
here we are.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm 100% a believer in alchemy and manifestation. And I think Will Smith, in an interview that he did once with Tavis Smiley, he said the universe is like water. It wants to move around you. It literally will conspire with you to bring about all that you intend. And so I could, as you said, I could not have predicted where we are right now. I could not have predicted a more relevant time to even put the film out, a more appropriate time to put the film out. But like I said, I was blessed in a lot of ways on this project to work with some pretty incredible people. Like I said, Brandon Morrison, my producing partner, along with his good friend from Michigan, KP. We had one of the dopest visual effects supervisors, man, you could ever have. I mean, in the film, if you notice the flares and all the different things, because again, we wanted to kind of hit that Super 8 kind of vibe in certain respects, you know what I mean? And this man, Andrew, he comes with a wealth of experience. I'm talking about some of your favorite films that you've ever seen. This man has had his hand in, from Avatar to Terminator. Like, this guy is a visual effects guru, and again, he's a client was in the barbershop one day, and he read the script and fell in love with the words, fell in love with the relationship between the father and the son, and was like, I want to be a part of this. Just tell me how I can be a part. And he worked at such a, I think he actually he worked for free and brought somebody else on that worked at a greatly reduced rate than what they would be getting paid to do some of your favorite films. But again, I mean, and even the star of the film, Joshua Caleb Johnson, this kid, man, listen, the stuff that he has coming on the horizon, I'm just happy that I was able to get him at this stage because he's about to be pretty expensive. And, he brought a sincerity to this piece, man, that was just undeniable. We were trying to find a kid that, as you said, could display the emotional maturity that this kid needed to display, but also with the nuance that he was able to display it in. And we saw a couple kids, and they were great. They were cool. But this guy, man, spoke to his mother through a serendipitous turn of events. Had already known her, but she said, send the script. I sent the script. And within 2 hours, he sent me back a self-tape that blew me away and blew the producer, my producing partner, away. And we said, this is the guy. And it was off to the races, man. Everybody who, the young lady who Jayla, who plays Emery, there's a slight little, adolescent love story in there. I hadn't even met her before we started filming. The day I met her was the day it was time to film. I just trusted my producing partner, and he was like, man, she's going to be great. And when you go back and watch, if you haven't picked it up before, and it gives nothing away, but there's a part of the film where Jaden, she gives him this cue, and sweet moment, and he walks away, he trips away, and as he trips away, he literally, and this is like genius of her, and it was a very small thing, but it was huge. She mouths Bob. And I remember seeing that in the takes when we were in the editing room, and I was just like, yo, this girl is genius for this, and it was just sweet little moments like that really made this film what it is. And I am very proud of it, ultimately, I have to say. And I love the response that it's received. It's been seen by a few people, and even people in higher spaces and places. They saw it a couple months back and expressed a desire to read the feature script. So there will be a feature film that will be made ultimately at some point that takes this film into another stratosphere. And I can't wait for everybody to see what that's going to be. I'm working on that script right now as we speak. And I got to be honest with you, man. Like, Jaden's character it's kind of grown, and I kind of want to give us our own sort of Marvel universe. That's all I'll say.
No, man. I mean, you talk about Magic Johnson's Megawatt Smile. I think I've gotten like a fraction of an inch, but when you said that it's going to be a like a full length feature, like that's exactly what I want. I mean, like it's an incredible story, and again, ensemble cast. They're everybody that you and your partner chose to be a part of this project. They fit their role like a glove.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was just you couldn't. And you were mentioning, when your dad gave you, that kind of assignment, right? To write that, and you were writing in the mind set of Angela Bassett. Yes, it was a slave movie and what have you,
Yeah,
but you wrote specifically
yeah,
for Angela Bassett and Denzel Washington, respectively, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
the fact that I couldn't tell at all. I mean, I would have been guessed that you wrote this for those specific actors, you know,
Yeah.
because again, the way that they put your vision, you and your production partner's vision into action, and
Hmm.
again, like the subtlety, a lot of people, when people measure greatness, but when you actually talk to the people, it's just like, whether it be Ric Flair, Kobe Bryant, whatever, there's legends in their
Yeah.
respective fields, Elon Musk, what have you, right? It's just those learning how to master those little things, right? If
Hmm.
you're a fight fan, as I cover fights, and when interviewing an athlete after a knockout or a submission or what have you,
Hmm.
the first thing that they said when mention of that very move, they're like, we've drilled that in the gym, that exact scenario, 1,000 times at the
Absolutely.
very least. And it's
Absolutely.
not hyperbole. It's it's actual, implication of a strategy, of a mindset, and that's why, like, I thought that you might have just wrote it for these specific actors because it was just they the little nuances were just amazing.
Listen, I'm saying I have no doubt that one day those two individuals will read words that the universe, God gifts me to give to them. I have no doubt that one day they will breathe words into a script that is said to be written by Avan Hardwell. No doubt whatsoever. Having said that, you know, for me, the word is king. You know what I mean, and on the page, and like I said, I want to tell stories that obviously make people feel something, but beyond making them feel something, I hope that it compels them to some form of action. In this case, with the night that came, the action that I hope that it compels them to do is to hug their family members a little bit longer, a little bit stronger, to call those who are still here with them, with us, to tell them how much they love, how much they appreciate. You know what I mean? To take these moments, this time, you know what I mean, which obviously we've been given a great deal of due to this unfortunate pandemic that we're experiencing right now. But on the flip, excuse me, on the flip side of it, not to be flippant at all, is the opportunity to spend time with those who we love, and to really to get to know them in a way that we may not have gotten to know them before, to understand them, and to hopefully grow that relationship greater than what it was. And I know that that's something that I've tried my best to do over this period of time when possible. I spent a lot of time writing, so I'm a little bit of a hermit in that respect. But this time has sort of forced me to recognize, okay, you gotta call granddad a little bit more. My granddad turned 91, and it's like every minute now, it's like get as much from him as you can because he's seen a lot, he's experienced a lot. So I hope that it compels people to do that, to really really explore, and to love the relationships that they have, to cherish them.
100%. And again, that's one thing that this time is kind of brought out is like, the situations, if you love them, it's almost bliss. Of course, there's financial windfalls and what have you, but I mean, it's bliss. But then
Yeah,
if you're in not the greatest of situation, it's like, it's the impetus to kind of flip it and go like, hey, maybe this isn't for me.
absolutely, absolutely. It's I listen during this quarantine. I've established my film company, Black Canvas Pictures, which is a subsidiary of a larger conglomerate. Um, you know what I mean? So that is solidified. You know what I mean? I'm putting together the team within the production company. We have a film slate that we're working on. I bought the option to tell a barber story in Iowa that is tremendous and transformational, in the likes of The Pursuit of Happiness. So I'm doing everything I can to create content that truly speaks to the heart and the nature of the experiences of people that we grew up with, people that we know, people that we love, people that we cherish, people who we believe their stories should be displayed on screen, and not in some colloquially acceptable manner that is trendy. I'm talking about a mainstay that brings balance to the cinematic universe that we have been for far too long sort of left out of and or given short shrift in. And so in order to do that, we've got to take the reins and build our own tables. And in building our own tables, that doesn't mean that we're excluding, but what it does mean is that we are with a very specific mindset saying that, I am the captain of my ship. I am the master of my fate. You know what I'm saying? And really kind of taking the bull by the horns and building, man. Like it's time for us to do that. And that's what I love about your podcast, man. You decided this needed to be in this space. You saw an opportunity. You took it. You are doing your thing. You're an incredible host, a gracious host. And it's obvious that you take the time not only to just kind of prepare for these conversations in a systemic kind of way, but you actually feel, you connect. And that's what all of this is about. The film, this podcast, the experiences that we're having right now in the world. It's about building connections. And if we honestly approach it with a sincerity of heart, then I think we'll be able to do that in a very masterful way, as you said.
I love it. I love it. Creating history. This is what we're doing, and I can't. Man, it means a lot. It means a lot. Thank you for doing this. But I gotta address one little elephant before I leave you.
Yeah.
But obviously the um, Amazon, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people that are trying to figure out what their dreams are or
Yeah.
how to manifest them in a way that is feasible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, was that the, short film on Amazon? Was that the route? Or because I love how effortlessly that you speak of names like Magic Johnson or, creating at five, and, a script for Angela Bassett and Denzel Washington, both
Mm-hmm.
Oscar winners, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is, it's like, most people would look at that and go like, "Oh my gosh, this is the 9,000 pound albatross,"
Mm-hmm.
and like, how do I pitch them, right? But I mean, did you gain that confidence from working with like the Magic Johnsons of the world, or is that just something that you were just sort of like, shoot for the moon, even if you fall short, you land among the stars?
Well, I will say this. It's sort of a two-part answer. Part one would be that whatever confidence I am perceived to have and believed to have came from my experiences in the church, growing up, standing before thousands of people Sunday after Sunday, and praying, talking, speaking, whatever the case may be. Bishop Dixon helped me hone that during my adolescence. And so, talking to people, with people, in front of people, words, if I had to say, if you were to ask me what my superpower is, it would definitely be the gift of speech and my love for the language. Always has been ever since we were kids, even up to the age that we are, the ripe age that we are right now. The other part of that, when you say, um, I would say that Amazon, when I got the email from Amazon saying that I had been published, or that the film had been published and it was now able to be seen by people essentially all over the world, that was kind of like the sort of the feather in the hat that was like, okay, but I'm a firm believer that, success to me is a subsidiary of failure. It's not the other way around. And I think that a lot of times people approach things with the mindset of success as the goal. And obviously, we all want to be successful in any endeavor that we undertake. But I think that what is key and in my opinion, far more important is the failure, because it's in failure that you learn all that you need to know in order to progress, right? There's that quote that says, Thomas Edison failed at making a light bulb 1,000 times. And his perception is, well, it wasn't that I failed 1,000 times. I just learned 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb, which meant that there was always desire to learn and to understand, to assess mistakes that were made, and to change them in an alchemist type way. As I said, I'm a big believer in alchemy. If your viewers, listeners have not read the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, I strongly suggest that they read The Alchemist, in addition to a book by James Allen called As a Man Thinketh. It is not in any way only for men. It is a quote from the scriptures in the Bible about as a man thinketh, so is he. And it very much deals with the thoughts and the ideas that you hold and believe in your heart, and how they ultimately transpire in the world and the experiences around us relative to the individual. So I would just say, with anything that I do, man, I expect failure. In fact, I embrace failure. And once that happens, I look at it and I say, now how do I get better? I watched Kobe Bryant as an adolescent shoot 3 air balls, and the city of Los Angeles hated him for it. What I did not know at the time was that when he left that gym, he went, helicopter landed in Los Angeles. He had his driver drive him to the Pacific Palisades, and he shot until the sun came up, right? So at the end of the day, he could have allowed those 4 air balls to completely throw him off and say, I'm not meant for this. I'm not meant for the big moments. Instead, he said, that's never going to happen again. Not like that. But I'm glad that that happened, because it made him even that much more of a beast in the gym. It gave him another will, another drive that a lot of people couldn't catch up to. So I would tell your listeners, your viewers, that failure is key. And in my opinion, far more important than success, because success is just it's a beautiful word that people like to throw around, and it makes them feel good. But failure is what makes you who you are.
No, it's kind of, again, it's a little bit apropos the fact that we're talking and we've known each other since middle school, because I mean, one of the indelible phrases, I don't know if you remember, but at Crozier they used to do like inspirational quotes on the board, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that really stuck out, and I remember I was walking with my sister and my mom, and she had just gotten off of work at City Hall, and the quote was, "It takes a lifetime to be an overnight success."
Yes.
And I think that speaks to what you were just saying.
Yes, sir. I mean, there's another book called The Outliers that I also think is an important book to read. It talks about the 10,000 hours that it takes for one to become a master at his craft. And even then, you're still mastering the craft. I'm all about craftsmanship. And the thing about it is, when you love what you do, like you love this, you know what I mean? Like, it's not work. You know what I mean? You might have your days where you're tired and you got to kind of get yourself up to do it, but it's not really, you're not getting yourself up to do it because you don't want to do it. It's just the physical tolls of life, right? But when you're actually doing it, there's nothing sweeter, man. So I encourage people to seek out your purpose, find out what it is, because once you know your purpose, you can live on purpose. And a life without purpose is an empty walk. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, writing, creating story, creating content, I mean, that I go to bed with it on my mind, and I wake up with it in the morning, and it's the most beautiful monkey on my shoulders that I got to deal with every single day, man. I wouldn't change it for the world. It's the greatest thing that I know. You know what I mean? So
it's brilliant, and again, to see it, and it all makes sense. It definitely makes sense, over the course of this very podcast. I would, basically kind of call to memory, some of the interactions and the things that we spoke about it as young men, and our relationship and what have you. And kind of how it's kind of in some ways kind of brought
Yeah.
it together, in this time.
That's right.
I think it's crazy, it's mystic, it's all of that, but there's got to be, I mean, there's a lot of people that have helped you get here to
Yeah.
your place of awakening, so I definitely want to give you some time to kind of shout those people out, or things, or because obviously there's a lot of things that kind of went in, not kind of, they definitely went into this project and all of the projects that you've been attached to.
Yeah.
So let's shout them out right here.
Man, listen, I mean, you always get in trouble when you start naming names, but I will say that, obviously my mother is a huge factor in all that I am, all that I hope to be. She will be 64 next week. And this woman is literally transferring from uh, LACC to Cal State Dominguez Hills, man. And she's like a big kid. She's getting her bachelor's degree at 64. And she inspires me daily. When I don't feel like doing this or I don't feel like doing that, that woman's will, her drive, that's where I specifically get it from. Obviously, like I said, my father was, some fathers give their sons basketballs, others give their sons, footballs and even tools to work in an auto body shop. My father gave me a pen. And so, that pen, no matter what happened growing up, he is forever etched in the history that began this journey that is writing, because he was the first one to give me a pen and say, go tell a story. And so I'll forever love him for that. But anybody else, man, you know what? I'm not going to shout out producers and actors because they know who they are, but I will shout out teachers because I think teachers need to be held up in higher regard. So I'm going to shout out Mr. Harrison from Crozier Middle School. I'm going to shout out Mr. P from Crozier Middle School, who taught me how to play the trumpet. I'm going to shout out Mr. Hafley from Inglewood High School. I'm going to shout out Miss Farrell from Inglewood High School. And I'm going to shout out Mr. Lewis, my math teacher from Inglewood High School. Those 5 people, all of them in one way, shape, or form, helped me become who I am today. And then I'm going to shout out the biggest teacher of them all, Mr. Magic Johnson, who really, really gave me all the tools that I needed, man, to believe in myself. And then kicked me out and said, go put them to work in the best possible way, man. And that's really what it's all about, brother. I mean, we're all responsible for each other, man. You know what I mean? So, like I said, if I start naming actors and producers and all this other kind of stuff, I'll get in trouble because I'll forget somebody. But they all know who they are. I love each and every one of them. Anybody that had a part in making this film what it is, I love and appreciate them. My workshop group that I wrote this script in, where I got notes every week, and people saying, I don't know about this, I don't know about that, try this, try that, because none of this is ever done. No, it's never really done alone. Even though I might spend a lot of time in the room by myself, you're always you have to trust people to say, okay, this is what my sensibility is. Where am I at? And so the workshop that I'm a part of, led by Michelle Gindelman, is a profound, profound help to any and everything that I write or have written up to this point. So I'm grateful for all my teachers, man, all my teachers, and I'm grateful to you. So special shout out to Mr. Adam Woods, the host, the man, the legend behind According to Woods. I want to say, man, I appreciate you for taking the time to not only watch the film, but to share the film with your family, to share the film with your viewing constituency. And not only that, man, for just being a brother. You said earlier that we were acquaintances, and that's true for some people, brother, but we were friends. You know what I mean? And so I am grateful that the universe has brought us back together in this way, through the weird cosmic gumbo that it does. And so special shout out to you, man, for really taking the time to see the beauty of the night that came and to think it worthy of this platform, which is one that I respect, one that I hold in high regard, and one that I cannot wait to see shatter all the records, man, that it's going to do. This is incredible. You're doing great work. Please don't stop. I can't wait to have another project to come and talk to you about.
Oh, you've got an open invitation. I'm sorry. Man, dude. You got me in the feels.
Hey man, listen,
Damn.
it's all real.
Thank you. Geez. For those who haven't already figured out where to find more information about the night they came and where to find the visionary and genius of one Avan Hardwell, where can they do such things?
Well, if they want to find myself, obviously on Facebook, I'm there, Avan Hardwell. You might find three of us because there happens to be three of us. I'm the youngest one of the three that you'll find. But the film trailer does live there. I believe the film itself lives there. Probably have to take it down soon because we want to direct everybody to Amazon to see the film. And at the same time, you can find me at West Writer on Instagram. I haven't really learned all the Twitter stuff yet, man. I'm kind of late to that whole thing. But on Instagram at West Writer, WESTWRITER. You can find me, and there you will find everything that I am, my political stances, my love for film. All of it is connected. I promise you. And if I'm thinking, I should be able to. Does this thing let you share? That we might be able to end on the trailer.
If you send me the link, I will definitely attach it to where it's posted for sure.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll send you the link, and people can absolutely see the trailer there, and it'll, like I said, Amazon Prime, the night they came. Man, I really want people to see it, and I hope that they love it and appreciate it the way you do. I appreciate all the kind words, man. You have no idea what it means to me, truly.
Well, I hope you get how much you mean to me, and that's not an abstract or anything like that. Again, you mentioned D Smoke, you mentioned Cadillac, now known as Lawrence Jackson,
Yeah.
but you Skip, you guys are all people that I, in many ways, kind of again peripherally kind of looked at and see what you guys were doing when a layoff happened, in my own life and what
Mm-hmm.
have you, and looked at and like I got to try a little bit harder, and I really and it goes without saying you have open invitation here at According to Woods. But I mean, to say it's an honor, I mean, I started off with saying it's an honor and privilege, but it absolutely is. And I can't wait to see what comes of whatever's percolating in your cosmic gumbo of thought and existence.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Next project you'll probably see will be quite different, but it'll have to do with a lot of what we're experiencing right now in terms of Black life in this country. And so I cannot wait to share that. There's so many projects I have, man. So again, thank you for the open invitation. And we'll say this now, man. Anytime I got a film coming out, I'll make sure that you're one of the first to see it before it comes out. Just so that we can have that type of a relationship. And I think it's important that, all of these platforms get their proper acknowledgement. And, there are these bigger platforms that people look to, and I get it and I understand it within the space. But for me, it's all about relationship. Like I said, it's about connection. So I'm saying to you, sir, going forward, that any film that comes out that has the moniker of another Hardwell original, you will be one of the first to see.
I really appreciate that because again, we're not just friends. You're not just a person that I love so dearly, but you are, like I said, I love what you're putting out, and it's just like, again, this is the time that we need to support each other, and it should be every time that we should support each other. If you notice in my timeline, it's not just my podcast that I share. my friends have podcasts. Hey, you know what? Everybody should have a podcast, because everybody's got a different story to tell. And yes, it might not get a million of downloads or $100 million Joe Rogan deal. And who, again, that's one of my mentors as well from afar. But
Absolutely.
if you reach one person, that's all it takes to make a
Oh,
difference in one person's life, to make that one person feel impactful, that I'm not the only person dealing with what I'm dealing with, and there is a hope for me. There is a canary in the coal mine, so to speak. And it's just, what you've done with this movie and what you will continue to do, I just cannot wait to see. As a fan, as a friend, as a brother, I can't wait.
all of your words, my man, to God's ears. I am incredibly grateful to you, for you. I want you well always and in always. I'm appreciative of you, brother, truly. Thank you for this platform.
Appreciate you, my brother. So again, this is According to Woods with Avan Hardwell. You guys must see. I mean, that's one last plug. The Night They Came on Amazon Prime. You're already getting your groceries delivered at the door. You've got Amazon Prime, and you should check out A Night They Came. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Avan, for being a wonderful guest, and we are out.
Peace.